Even the most stubborn, most monstrous beings in existence can have a change of heart. If not, they can at least get a lot cooler. Lex Luthor. Superman's arch nemesis has been a big deal for nearly a century, remaining at the top of his league as one of the most recognizable villains in all of DC, and that's thanks to his hidden superpower, the ability to keep up with the times. When Lex first started out in the villain league, he was far different from the Luthor we've all come to know and love. In fact, he went by Alexi Luthor and even started out with red hair. Funny enough, Lex's baldness can be attributed to an art mistake where the penciler confused Lex with the bald and bulkier Ultra Humanite, giving us the look that Lex would rock for the rest of his existence. Now as time went on, he transformed from just a mad scientist into this evil businessman type. He still had this evil genius side to him, but now he had a big corporation doing his dirty work, which made him a more complex villain, adding depth by showing a different kind of intelligence and ambition. Now post-Crisis, the modern Lex is a mix of all these versions. He's an evil genius with the resources of a huge corporation, giving him a blend of sophistication and power. Next up is Magneto. For a character that started off as basically a knockoff to Dr. Doom, Magneto has certainly come a long way from being perceived as just a mere villain. Of course, at first glance he might seem like a bad guy bent on destroying humans, but his journey is deeper than that. His haunting origin story led him to believe that mutants should rule, given how humans treated mutants so poorly. As time rolled on, Magneto's story got twisty. Sometimes he teamed up with the good guys, showing a different side. He even began understanding the importance of working together with humans, at least on occasion. His character evolved, showcasing moments of empathy and understanding. I mean, sure, he still does clash with the X-Men, but his motivations and actions have changed. He's a prime example of a villain who's undergone a roller coaster journey, blurring the lines between good and bad. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Jason Todd. When this iteration of Robin first popped up in Batman comics, he was just a redhead acrobat sidekick, which is a far cry from the anti-hero we know today. His origin story changed over time from being a determined kid wanting to be Batman's sidekick to having a more darker, tragic past after Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now this guy wasn't just another Robin. He was more intense and pretty rough with bad guys, sometimes even crossing Batman's line. Now sadly, his impulsive nature led to his tragic end in A Death in the Family, where Joker beat him with a crowbar. This hit Batman hard, and Jason's death became a warning for future Robins about the dangers of their job. But after this, he miraculously came back to life and took up the mantle of the Red Hood. As the Red Hood, he went down a dark path, disagreeing with Batman's crime-fighting methods and becoming way more ruthless with criminals. Now over time, he's changed, becoming a better team player, leading his own squads, and even patching things up with Bruce Wayne. He's mellowed out a bit from his etchier days as the Red Hood, and is working to be a hero in his own way, even earning Batman's trust back. Next up is Sandman. William Baker, better known by his alias as Flint Marko, has most definitely come a long way. Starting out as just another super-powered thief, slowly but surely his character became fleshed out with a tragic backstory with a motive to justify his actions that would even make a grown man cry, or at least a young AJ. Baker has even been able to reform over the years, growing into a formidable anti-hero, which is a far cry from his initial appearance as a two-dimensional robber that got beaten by Spidey with a vacuum cleaner. Now, before all that, in his childhood, his dad wasn't around, his mom struggled with substance abuse, and bullies made his life miserable. When he finally stood up for himself, he got a taste for power, and that's when things took a turn. Flint started being a bully himself, letting others do his work because school wasn't his thing, but his path got even rockier when he messed with football games for money and then got kicked out of school. Then came his stint in prison, but that didn't hold him for long. After he escaped, he ended up in a nuclear test and survived, gaining these insane sand powers. Instead of turning his life around though, he chose the wrong path again, becoming the Sandman, using his powers for crime. Boy was he good at it, even being a founding member of the Sinister Six and the Fantastic Four. Now Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, a film which most people would rather forget happened, revealed that all his villainy had been an attempt to save his terminally ill daughter, adding a touch of humanity to justify his actions and proving that deep down he's not such a bad guy. In fact, he would go on to fight alongside heroes in the Outlaws and the Wild Pack, and even as a reserve Avenger. While he continues to work against the law, there's still that spark of good which comes out every now and then. Catwoman. Ever since her debut in Batman comics, she's undergone some major transformations, making her one of the most dynamically changing villains. Initially seen as a Gotham baddie, she's now more of an anti-hero. She's been part of different groups like the Justice League and the Outsiders, proving that she's not all bad, especially after her and Batman's rocky engagement. Her backstory's been all over the place too. Before a big DC event, she had memory loss lost from a plane crash, but then another story, she was a dominatrix turned burglar, which is definitely crazy. Now, one huge change came in 2015 when she smooched another Catwoman, which was a huge deal for the LGBTQ+ community and representation in comics. Now, sometimes in her backstory she knows her parents, other times she grows up in an orphanage. Her sister's in and out of the picture depending on which story you read. And her moral code is definitely all over the place. Sometimes she's not into eliminating people at all, but other times, when her loved ones are in danger, she is quick to throw down. Black Adam. He started off as a baddie due to his family mess. He claimed that he was innocent in some serious stuff involving Captain Marvel's folks, and it turned out that he wasn't the guilty party. But even with his newfound good guy claim, he ended up causing trouble with the Justice Society, teaming up with the bad guys at first, the Injustice League. Later on, after some brain surgery to remove a tumor, he switched sides again, helping the good guys beat the bad ones. He even helped the Justice Society in a huge fight against this demon dude. Now, they were weary about letting him join the team because of his super shady past, but eventually they gave him a chance. The thing is, he couldn't shake his old ways entirely. He and some pals went a bit too extreme, deciding to take justice into their own hands by offing a terrorist, which caused a huge fight in the Justice Society again. Even though he had moments of being a hero, his past just kept on haunting him. He had ups and downs, sometimes doing good, sometimes causing chaos, but lately he's been leaning more towards the hero stuff, teaming up with big leagues like the Justice League. But the big question hanging over him is whether he'll stay on the hero path or slip back into his dark side. Thanos, the big baddie from the Marvel Universe, didn't always look the same or act the same in comics or in movies. When he first popped up in the 70s, he was this skinny, less wrinkly purple guy, but as time passed, artists beefed him up to resemble the much bulkier villain we recognize today. This dude didn't just change physically though. He started out as a shady character, working behind the scenes and using gadgets for power, but later, he upgraded to this super powerful being wielding insane cosmic abilities, culminating in the infamous Snap. But he didn't always stay a full-time bad guy. Sometimes he teamed up with the good guys, which was pretty weird, and in a comic series called Infinity, he even got his own squad of followers, making him way more organized in his evil deeds. They did lots of changes for the movies too. In Infinity War, Thanos wasn't just this evil guy for the sake of it. He had the idea to make the universe better by destroying half of anything, which was pretty crazy. Dr. Doom, usually the thorn in the side of Fantastic Four, but once in a blue moon, he pulls off a move that makes you think twice about his villainous ways. In this wild Marvel showdown called Secret Wars in 2015, Doom did the unthinkable, admitting that Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic himself, could have done a better job with all the power Doom had, which is super shocking considering it's coming from Dr. Doom. Even more mind-blowing, Doom gave up his crazy cosmic powers to Reed, and in return, Reed fixed Doom's messed up face. Now, after this whole power swap, Doom went all in to be a good guy. Yeah, that's right. When Tony was out of action because of Captain Marvel, Doom took on the Iron Man gig. And guess what? He was not pretending. He genuinely wanted to be a hero, which is just insane to think about. But even for a hot minute, he had even teamed up with the Human Torch and the Thing, fighting the good fight. Major Disaster. Once a not so popular green baddie, Major Disaster surprised everyone by flipping the script and joining the Justice League of America. Back in the day, he was like this forgotten action figure buried deep in the toy chest, a Z-list villain that nobody really cared about. But then, he became a Justice League member during the Joe Kelly and Doug Mankey's JLA run, and the shockwaves were astronomical. A villain teaming up with the heroes was major eyebrow-raising material. At first, the League gave him the side eye, as expected, trust issues, you know, but slowly but surely they warmed up to him. This was Major Disaster's shining moment in the big leagues. Fans cheered for his unexpected turnaround. But then, eventually, after the story arc, he panicked. He just vanished. Fans were pretty bummed because they wanted more, but he's been missing in action ever since. Mr. Freeze, initially known as Dr. Victor Fries or Mr. Zero, started off as a typical icy antagonist in the world of comic books. But let me tell you, his story took a wild turn in 1992 with that Batman the Animated Series episode called Heart of Ice. You see, before that, it was just your run-of-the-mill baddie chilling out in the background of Batman's world, but then something magical happened. The animated series reimagined Mr. Freeze, giving him depth that we'd never seen before. And his voice, oh man, he had this deep, haunting voice that made you just feel his pain. Suddenly, Freeze wasn't just freezing Gotham, he was a guy wrecked by sadness and revenge. The core of this story revolved around his wife, Nora. Freeze was desperately trying to save her from a terminal illness, but big corporate greed and a tragic lab accident with cryogenic stuff turned him into a guy who can't survive outside of an ice suit. But then things got icy in a bad way. Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze in that Batman and Robin movie? Yeah, the one with all the cold puns, like chill out and ice to meet you. It was a goofy take that turned Freeze into a walking joke, and unfortunately that's what what many folks still remember him as to this day. In the comics, Freeze stayed close to the serious version from the animated series until the New 52 reboot shook things around. Scott Snyder took Freeze in a different direction, making him way less sympathetic by altering his backstory. Suddenly, Nora wasn't his wife anymore, just some girl with a made-up illness. And the guy who pulled the plug on his research, surprise, surprise, it was none other than Bruce Wayne himself, which was a twist that made everyone involved a lot less likable. So while some chop him up as just a dude with the freeze ray, he's actually way cooler than that. Pun intended. As always, if there's a villain who's changed that you think I've missed in today's video, feel free to let me know down in the comments. This has been AJ with Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you all in another video.